If you've ever asked yourself, should you commit or quit on a project, stay tuned because that's what I'm going to be talking about today. You may not know me. My name is Vernon, aka V2, aka Famous Vernon. Welcome. Thank you for your time, for coming here today. And I wrote this piece and I just wanted to share with you. It was on my heart. And the piece is called Should I Stay or Should I Go, Commit or Quit? And just a little bit of backstory um, behind this. And it takes a little bit of getting to know about me, but I think it's going to help you. So stick with me. Um, I'll start by saying for me, starting always feels exciting, man. Like I'm the guy who has literally a life of projects. So my newsletter is called. And the reason why I say that is because it is directly reflected in my body of work. It's not a flex. And so, what does all this mean? The speed at which I can ship things makes people's minds boggle. I mean, I can pretty much ship something out. And when I say ship, that's like a project, get something done, execute in a week, where it would take somebody a month, 3 months, maybe less with AI now. And so I have this addiction to newness, an appetite for novelty. And that's my current and ongoing dilemma. And this is important for you to hear because if you're like me or you have some ADHD tendencies, it's never the starting that is the issue. It's the messy middle. It's the stuff in between. And so how do you determine what you should do? How do you determine if you should commit or quit? That's what we're going to be talking about. So back in the 90s, there was this song by what's the guy's name? Freak Nasty. And the song was like, when I dip, you dip, we dip. I put my hand up on your hip. When I dip, you. Now, if you're a millennial like me, you probably know that song. Maybe some of you don't. Maybe you're like, I'm an older millennial. But if y'all are on the younger side, then y'all probably don't know that song. Go Google it. But anyway, there's this thing called the dip. And one of my all-time favorite OG writers is a guy by the name of Seth Godin. If you don't know him or haven't heard his name, go look him up too. And Seth put me on to this concept of the dip. And I think it's important for two reasons that I'll share. The first is that it allows you to contextualize the project or whatever you're working in to assess whether it's a good time to continue to move forward or stop. Very important. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'll tell you in a minute, but that's the first thing. So the way we define the dip, just so we're not confusing it with DJ, the nasty 90s banger, The Dip. It's the mile marker 8.1 in a marathon. It's your YouTube channel getting to 75 subscribers and just chilling. It's the 12,432 words sitting on your Google Drive that'll hopefully be your book one day. So when I say the dip, that's what we're talking about. And again, if you're listening to this, you're probably past the start. You've probably already started. And so that can be what's called as a Herculean, and in reference to Hercules, that could be a Herculean effort in itself. And if you're not prepared, it's going to be even more difficult to continue. So it's not necessarily the start, right? We're coming back to, it's the messy middle. It's the dip. And so in his book, The Dip, Seth Godin outlines these 3 scenarios that I think is super dope, because now you can contextualize whatever project or thing that you're working on and put it into something where you can actually evaluate if you should commit or quit. Okay, so it's important to know which one you're in. So there's 3 different ones. So the first one is the dip, right? And the dip is basically you start off, it's very rewarding. It becomes discouraging, and then it becomes highly rewarding again. So if you can imagine this, it's like, and then you go back up, right? So that's the first version. This is the dip, as Seth Godin would define it. And then you have what's called the cul-de-sac. Now the cul-de-sac, just like in a neighborhood, a cul-de-sac is this dead end where you can work really hard. You can spin your wheels almost indefinitely and not see any progress, not see any change. And you just keep spinning your wheels, but you're still in that same cul-de-sac, right? It's a cul-de-sac is, think of it as there's one way in and there's one way out, and you can just kind of go in circles there. So that's the cul-de-sac, right? And then you have what's known as the cliff. Now, the cliff is exactly what it means, right? It's you start, you feel progress, and then it's just a complete spiral downward. You lose all momentum, and it's a disastrous drop, right? You don't come back from that. Ain't no coming back. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. So those are the 3, right? So just so we're clear, there's the dip, there's the cul-de-sac, and then there's the cliff, right? So now that we have that, how do we contextualize it? How do we frame it, right? You frame it, and this is the second part. This is the other piece why it's important, because now that we know, we have a way to evaluate whether we're in the dip, the cul-de-sac, or the cliff. Then we can ask ourselves 3 questions, and there's a 3-question simple way to evaluate, and I'll give you that. But before that, I want to talk about my specific situation, because I think it's relevant and to contextualize. I don't just like giving people information. Like you can go Google all this shit, right? Like, or ChatGPT or Claude now, right? So the information isn't the thing. It's being able to contextualize it so you can understand it from my point of view and what I'm actually experiencing right now and how I'm applying this to my own life, right? Would you agree? Say yes. I know you're saying yes. So in December of 2025, I launched this thing called Growth Dinners. I'll link to some videos somewhere where I've been talking about this, because I've been kind of like documenting the journey. And it was a bet that the post-pandemic founders like myself we're tired of building in isolation. I mean, people who are solo founders, even if they are not solo founders, you don't have, people to lean on. You don't have, outside of your personal relationships, maybe your spouse, in my case, my wife, or maybe your friends don't understand because they're not founders or entrepreneurs or creators. So there's this world where you're constantly under pressure, and there's so much that you can't reveal or talk about, and you're kind of a shell of yourself. You kind of edit who you are because you can't dump all those problems, and even if you did, those people don't understand. So I decided that I was going to do something about that. What did I do? I hosted a dinner in December of 2025. It was a huge hit. I mean, everybody loved every minute of it. And it brought me back to my DJing days. And I look at 1, 2 of hosting, getting the crowd hype, because I was the facilitator of the dinner. Now, the only problem is, now that I'm 7 months in, almost 8 at the time of recording this, there is very little revenue. There's no revenue. And it is a dip, or at least I was trying to figure out, is this a dip? Is this a cul-de-sac, or is this a cliff? Right? And in my mind, I was like, please don't tell me this is a dip. Please don't tell me that this is a cul-de-sac, or please don't tell me that this is even worse, a cliff. And so I was like, should I stay or should I go? Should I commit or quit? And so that's where this actually came from. So I reached out to 2 of my friends that I respect. They're founders as well. They run successful companies. One does over $1 million. The other one is very close to that. And I told them where I was at. I got brutally honest. I was like, hey, I've been doing this thing. And their advice was solid, right? And I appreciated their perspective. But ultimately, I have to decide, right? I can't put it on somebody else and say, hey, like, you decide my future for me. We should never do that. That's terrible. And so then I started looking, and I found the dip, and it brought me back to, well, I got reacquainted with the dip, and it brought me back to this 3 set of questions, which this is what I said, or I was going to tell you about earlier. And these 3 questions are beautiful, because the way Seth breaks this down, Seth Godin, he basically says, before you actually go through it quitting, it should be like a strategic quitting, right? And knowing when to walk away, that's actually the smart way to quit. And so there's 3 questions that you can ask. And so the first question is, am I panicking? Am I panicking right now? And so I actually went through this, right? I went through this myself, and I said, okay, like, am I panicking? And I was like, hell yeah. I am freaking out. I mean, I'm in my 40s, I'm married, and I've made promises, and those promises are past their due date, right? And so I kind of put on this hat. There used to be this thing back in the day when I was younger, I don't know if it was when I was in elementary or middle school, and it was this phrase like, what would Jesus do? I'm not like super religious. I just say that in the context of, I don't want people to feel like I'm posturing, trying to like use religion. And I believe that there's a higher power. I believe in a God, but I'm not like, I didn't say that like on a religious subtext, I just want to put that out there. Maybe something to take a look at for myself. So then I put on this hat of like, what would Seth say? And so in this case, I kind of like body doubled, or I don't know if that's the right frame of saying it, but I put myself in Seth's shoes and kind of had a conversation with myself. And in this case, with growth dinners, I think Seth would say, decide in advance if you're starting a project, if you're going to quit and what the terms were going to be, right? Before you even start. And so obviously that's not, we're past that stage, right? We already started. So I think in this case, he'd probably say, don't quit on a bad day, and get to a place where your nervous system, right? Your nervous system is operating from a place of being settled and not operating out of fear and then making the decision from fear, right? And I think he would say, this is a dip. So the second question that Seth says to ask is, who am I trying to influence? And this is important because influence can have a lot of different meanings. I actually have a podcast called Rooms of Influence. And so in the context of this, I'm trying to influence founders and operators. These are the folks that I feel called to like support. Creators can fall in that bucket. And those are the type of people that I have at my dinners. I love being around them. They're visionaries. They're outward focused. They want to build things. And I just love being around those folks, right? So part of my thing is from the dinners, getting people into a mastermind. And that really has been the uphill battle, right? It's been the conversion from dinner to mastermind and making that, making it a stable business model. And then in this case, again, I said, okay, well, what would Seth say? What would my man Seth say? And Seth would say, either you're talking to the wrong people about your mastermind, or that's the wrong market. Focus on the market, not the individual, and go get more reps and build more influence. So that was insightful too. So far it's like all signs point to me not quitting, right? And then number 3, this is the third question. What sort of measurable progress am I making? Is the question that he wants us to ask. And so, I've hosted 6 dinners now. We've landed our first community partner. I've helped a handful of founders in the community get unstuck. I had one gentleman reach out to me the other day and was like, hey, so-and-so I met at the dinner, just introduced me to some investors. And I just wanted to say thank you so much because that really meant a lot. And it's super warming to that's something that you can't buy, right? And I have this thing with my homie Nemo. We always go, how can we impact people's lives in a way that they could never repay us? Right? So that's a very high bar. And things like this are ways we get to do that. To recap, there are 3 different ways for you to tell where you're at on a journey with a project. You could either be in a dip, which ultimately means it's just a temporary thing and it's going to bounce back. It could be a cul-de-sac. You're spinning your wheels and you may just continue to be there and it may be a good time to walk away. Or you're basically at the edge of the cliff, or you're headed down to the bottom and it's not savable. And the way to really identify and understand how to work through this is to ask yourself these 3 questions, as Seth says. And those 3 questions are, am I panicking? Which in my case I was. 2, who am I trying to influence? Very important, because you may be trying to influence the wrong people. And then 3, what sort of measurable progress am I making? So ask yourself those 3 questions, and that way you'll know where you stand. If you enjoyed this video, I have more coming, so stick around, or I don't even know if you have to subscribe these days. I think it just follows you around the internet. But what I would love for you to actually do is subscribe to my newsletter in the comments section. It's called Life of Projects. I give more in-depth detail about things exactly like this, and I fundamentally believe you and I and the world should be building projects, because it's one of the core ways that we can find meaning and purpose in our life without meandering, trying to find this elusive thing that we chase called purpose. And it has nothing to do with your job title or your bank account. You can be a bajillionaire, or you can have $20 in your wallet, and you can still find something in the world to build that's meaningful to you and that feels good and that ultimately has the ability to impact yourself, somebody, your family, anybody. And that's why I believe we should be starting projects. So go over there and subscribe to the newsletter, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.